Welcome to Dentside Depot, a channel dedicated to classic Ford trucks. In today's episode, we're going to go over 10 vintage Ford dealer accessories that you may or may not have seen before. Definitely probably haven't seen before if you haven't watched my channel, so sit back and relax and let's see what we got. The first accessory we're going to discuss today is Ford's Fuel Sentry that was available over the counter in the 70s and the 80s. What you would get in the kit, first of all and most importantly, would be this gauge pod assembly. The gauge pod assembly itself ran off the engine's vacuum and it would indicate to you whether you were getting poor, good fuel mileage, or if you needed to decelerate if it was getting too high up into the green. In the kit, you'd get the gauge pod, you would get all of the mounting hardware and the vacuum lines, along with a little piece to get into your engine's vacuum system. It was backlit as well, so there was a light for it, and you can see that's how it would hook up, and that's how it would potentially mount in the dash. So pretty good directions came with this piece. Now, what was the point of it? Well, the point was that it would show you if you were getting good or bad fuel mileage with your car or truck, potentially. Now, what it didn't do was tell you what the actual engine vacuum was. It just simply said poor, good, or decelerate. So, is that accurate? I don't really know. You can judge that for yourself. But it certainly doesn't tell you exactly what engine vacuum you have in your engine system. But overall, this was definitely a really cool accessory. I think a lot of the U-Haul trucks got this one, but definitely a cool accessory of the 70s and 80s. Our next accessory is definitely a fun one for sure. It is the dealer owner's manual emergency plastic key kit. So the dealers would put these, I think in probably the late 80s going into the early 90s. And Ford wasn't the only one to do it, but they would put these Ford branded plastic keys in, and you could have the dealer cut the key for your ignition and your door lock cylinders, and you would keep it in your wallet for emergency purposes only in case you forgot your key. Now, I did get this one cut for this truck, and I have started this truck with this key before, but let's do it again here today and see if it still works. Hopefully it doesn't break on me. All right, the key still works. So that's definitely a really cool accessory, and it would just be in your owner's manual. You may have not even known it was there, but you get it cut and then keep it in your wallet, and like you saw, I got an emergency plastic key for this truck. Next accessory that we have is the compass kit, also available over the counter in the 70s into probably the early 80s. Now, there were a lot of aftermarket manufacturers that made this as well, and you could probably get them at gas stations and stuff like this. But this is a Ford branded accessory. What you would get is a little tiny mount that would have a sticker on it, and it would mount to your dash however you wanted to stick it on there, and it would even be lit up. You'd put a battery in, and when you push the button in, it would light up. It came with direction manuals to show you how it works and everything else, and pretty cool, especially before GPS. I mean, you were really using a map and potentially a compass back then, and that was pretty much the only way to do it. So definitely one of my favorite accessories, very unique. You don't really see these, especially NOS in the box. Next up is the collision avoidance light. Now, this was made for 1985 and prior passenger vehicles, and is definitely an oddball dealer accessory that you could get back in the day. Now, this was intended for vehicles that were built before third brake lights were mandatory. You could see in the kit you would get a plastic housing, the light lens. I don't know if it came with bulbs. I'm not really sure on that, but you get the whole installation kit to wire it in, and it looks like you probably had to buy your own bulb. There'd be a little relay, and then all the wires and everything else you would need to mount it up, along with a sticker to put it in. But definitely a really unique dealer accessory that obviously you wouldn't see that today because, oh, yep, it did include a bulb. Obviously every vehicle today has a third brake light, but pretty neat. Did it actually make any difference? I don't know. You can determine that on your own. Next up, we have the holy grail of dealer license plates for classic Ford truck guys, and it is the Ford branded Ford Trucks front vanity plate. And if you lived in a state that didn't require a front license plate, this was the tag that you wanted to get for your classic Ford truck. They would mount right there, obviously, and this was the very 70s vintage looking brand that was really era correct for these trucks. There were two different styles. They both said 155 420 on them, and the earlier ones also said they were officially licensed Ford products. The later ones didn't necessarily say that. They're made of metal. If you have a plastic one, it's not real, it's a fake. This one's still NOS in the package. I have a few of them, but that is definitely the front vintage vanity plate that you want to have on your classic Ford truck. Next up, we have what I think is one of the absolute coolest vintage Ford dealer accessories that you could get. The Ford Emergency Information System CB radio in a box. Now, these were made by General Electric and you could get them anywhere, but this one is a Ford branded one that would have been sold at the dealership. As you can see right here, and oh look, FCC call sign, that's pretty cool. So here's what you got in the package. You would get the radio antenna that was magnetic. It would plug into your cigarette lighter like so. So there you go. Obviously your antenna would go on the roof of the truck. And then you had your module right here, okay? Now you would push to talk, change your band, where you're gonna be at, your channel, and you essentially had an emergency communication system for back in the day when people actually used CB radios still. Definitely an awesome one for sure. Next up is the air horn kit. Now, these were technically made by Hadley, but again, you could order these from Ford at the dealer and have the entire kit be Ford branded. You can see this one is NOS in the box, but they're all the same parts that you would get from the Hadley Day 2 aftermarket air horn kit. You have the compressor, you have the vacuum tank, you have all the electronics including the switch, the mounting brackets for the horns, and then of course all of the lines to hook it in and get it operational. But essentially you were just adding a really cool air horn kit, and it would have the Ford symbol on it. You could mount it on your roof, inside the cab, or inside the engine compartment, or whatever you wanted, and you could blast away. Many vintage Ford vehicles did not come with a tachometer from the factory. That was certainly the case with all 70s Ford trucks except for the commercial grade trucks that may have had one. But what you probably didn't know is that you could actually buy a tachometer kit over the counter from Ford, and it would have a Ford brand on it. Now, they are very difficult to find and they are usually very expensive. These tachometers were made by a company called Faria, and they are still in business today. Typically, you would see these Faria tachometers, these instruments, on the Shelby Cobras. They would have been added to the Shelby Cobras as the tachometer kit. Some of them would be 6K, some would go up to 9K, and many of them would have the Shelby Cobra on them instead of the Ford emblem. There are many variations that you could get. They would come with factory Ford style connectors. You would hook them into your distributor, etc., and you would have a Ford factory tachometer kit. Definitely a cool dealer accessory to have. The next dealer option is actually cruise control. While most trucks had the cruise control installed at the factory, you could also get it installed at the dealer. In this case, the dealer would add first this item right here, which would hold the throttle cable open. Underneath the truck, there would actually be a magneto that would go to the drive shaft, and this would give the sensing for how fast the vehicle was going. That sensor would be traced all the way up into the cab where the cruise control module could be found. Now, something interesting about this cruise control model is, look, it was actually made by Dana Corporation out of Toledo, Ohio. So this was not some cheap Chinese piece of junk that got shipped overseas and then installed by Ford. Here's the cut harness for the magneto that you would find on the drive shaft. It would have vacuum going to the pedal, and when the pedal was depressed, that would release the cruise control automatically. This is the module up in here, and that was your computer system for how it was all controlled. For 1978, this was pretty high-tech stuff and was definitely one of the coolest dealer options that you could get in this time period. And that brings us to our final dealer accessory for today, and that is Ford's visor kit. You could get these for many different types of vehicles. This one is for a 70s Ford truck. Essentially what you would do is you would put them on the outside of the door at the top window channel. They would stick in underneath the channel, and there'd be 3 Phillips head screws that would go in, so you could keep your window cracked open while you were driving down the road in the rain, and you wouldn't get rain inside of the cab. Definitely a cool option, and I do have this on a couple of my trucks, and I like them very much. Cool little feature to have. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Dentside Depot. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're interested in 70s Ford trucks restorations, you can check out my channel and see this 1979 F350 Super Cab that is being Cummins swapped. So head on over, check it out, and we will see you in the next episode.